We heard in the first reading, darkness covers the earth and thick clouds cover the people. It could have been written today, couldn't it? But it was written over 2,500 years ago. And still going on. Yesterday, the dark actions down in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, in the airport. 5 people killed, 8 injured. For what? Or 3 shot last night in Minneapolis. Or we heard in the news recently about in Chicago last year there were over 4,000 shootings and over 700 of them died. Saw something in the paper this morning about fraud and people who were arrested because of that. I don't want to get too depressing here, so we'll stop there. You get the point. Darkness still is in the earth, covers the earth. But in the midst of that, the reading also says, your light has come. You shall be a light to the nations. Well, how real is that? I mean, don't we need to see the light of Christ in this world? Because there's darkness that is all too prevalent and all too obvious. Don't we need to see the light of Christ pierce this darkness? Wouldn't it be great if we could see that? And you know what? We can. Just from the last couple days as well. I saw something about St. Paul schools. There were a whole bunch of kids whose lunch money was in debt and were in danger of not being fed at school because they were in debt. And did you see it in the paper? $28,000 were raised from people so that they could pay off their debts and the kids could eat. Is that not light, or what is it? Or, I don't know if you watch CBS Evening News, but I watched it last night, and on Fridays they always have this segment about On the Road with Steve Hartman. Anybody see that? A few people did? Okay, well on that, Steve Hartman went to a place outside St. Louis, Red Bud, Illinois, as I understand, and there was a repo guy who repossessed cars. Bank hires him to do that. His name was Jim Ford. And Jim Ford went to this house, and there was an elderly couple there, and they were saying that they just fell way behind, not only for that, but also for their other debts. And so he hooked the car up and took off. And when they took off, Pat, the wife, said, well, I said to God, do whatever you think is best for us. 1 block later, Jim Ford pulled the car over, the tow truck over, and he called the bank and said, what would it take for them to have their car? What's the latest thing? He says it'd take $100. So he said, okay. And he didn't bring the car back right away, but then he set up a GoFundMe page, told the story, because he says, these are the grandparents and of typical in America. They could be my grandparents. The situation just touched my heart, and so he set up this GoFundMe page and raised $17,000 on it. So he brought the car back to the couple, and it's all fixed up, even changed the oil, detailed it, and then and he gave him the car back and the $17,000 back. And Steve Hartman asked the couple, I said, what did this teach you? And she says, it taught me that there are a lot of really good people in the world. And Steve ended the thing saying, you can't get a job just to be kind, but kindness is always an option. Is that not light in the world, or what? The last one I'll tell about was I heard also on the news about, maybe you saw this, a toddler who was outside a house a woman came home. She left her home with her kids and then forgot something and came back. And when she getting back in the van, she heard a little kind of a cry or a whimper from a kid, and she looked around and couldn't see it right away. And then she went and looking and found this little toddler, I don't know, 2 or 3 year old. Anybody hear that? Anyway, it's true. It happened. And so she says, well, I looked around and found the child, and then I went and put him in my van, the warm van, and then I called 911. I thought, well, what a great thing. The next day, I was driving to the hospital listening to Christian radio, and lo and behold, this lady is on Christian radio. And so they're interviewing her, and she said, they said, well, what possessed you to do that? What do you think about that? She says, every day I get up in the morning and I say, God, I want you to direct my life today. And I know you can do that in any way you want. And that day, that mistake I made, forgetting what I forgot, it sent me back home, and God sent me to this child, and there it was. And I was able to help this child, probably save it from death, because you might have noticed it's cold around here. Those are just 3 examples, and I've got more, but those are just 3 examples of where it is not somebody's fairy tale, not somebody's imagination, but that the light of God, the light of Christ, shines in this world. Still today, in the midst of the darkness. And if we are awake enough, we can see it. We open our eyes, we can see it. The truth of the matter is that these astrologers, these magi, they traveled a long way following the light of this star through the darkness of the night to get to Bethlehem, to see the child, the new king of the Jews. We followed the light, and they came to the people who you would think would have known in their own scriptures that this was predicted, but they didn't. But these strangers did. They were searching, and they came and they found the child. They didn't even know he was the Son of God. They just knew he was the new king of the Jews. They went there, and it says they went back by another way. That means that it wasn't the same old for them. They had seen something new. That light pierced whatever darkness there was in their hearts and led them by another way home. They began to see and to respond differently. And we too are called to open our eyes and to see the light of Christ, which can pierce the darkness of our lives in the darkness that we experience in this world. It can give us hope. It can give us direction. It can strengthen us, because it can be pretty discouraging. All this bad news, it can be pretty discouraging unless we see as we believe that the light of Christ still shines in this world. And those magi traveled a long way. Well, I suspect that we have a distance to travel as well. Not that we got to pack up our vans or cars or whatever we got and travel a long distance. That's the easy part. The hard part is traveling the distances takes internally to open up our minds, to see how Christ can pierce the darkness of our lives, and how, as a matter of fact, we can now be light in this world. Similar to those 3 examples I had, and in many, many different ways. And how do we get there to be that light? By doing what the Magi did, going to the Christ. Jesus, the Christ. And getting to know him and understand what his message is, but more getting to know who he is ourselves. To develop a relationship with him. Because that's the source from which we draw. The source of light, the source of grace, the source that strengthens us, gives us direction, and gives us hope. How do we do that? Just so happens, we've got something here we're starting in a few weeks. It's called the Discipleship Initiative. It's a course, but it's more than a course. It's an invitation called Discovering Christ, for us to let our hearts be touched and opened, if we can go that far, be opened, so that we might come to know Christ better, so that we can follow him more closely, so that we can be a brighter light in this world which needs our light to shine, the light of Christ to shine through us, just as we need to see it in others. It's not the same old, same old. This is what I do. Don't rock my boat. Well, God's been known to rock our boats. And that's what we're called to do, is to let the light shine in our darkness. Let Christ enlighten our lives more, so that we might shine. Be that light of Christ in this world. And it's not in huge, fantastic ways. It's like being kind. It's like being generous. It's by being alert to someone in need. We'll hear more at the end of Mass about this discovering Christ thing. But it's not just a thing. It's a life. To find how Christ is calling us to be alive and to be his light in this world.